The first thing Lily Parker noticed wasn't the smile. It was the timing of it. Half a second too late, like someone following a script instead of living a moment. And in a room where every gesture was rehearsed to perfection, that tiny delay felt louder than a gunshot in silence. The ballroom shimmered under warm gold chandeliers, a sea of tailored suits and designer gowns flowing across polished marble floors. Waiters weaving through the crowd with silver trays of champagne. Soft jazz threading through the air like a heartbeat you didn't realize you were listening to until it stopped. And at the center of it all stood Ethan Cole, 6'2", calm, composed. The kind of man who didn't need to raise his voice because the room adjusted itself around him. Lily stood a few steps behind, tablet in hand, eyes scanning the event schedule, every detail accounted for down to the minute. Just another flawless night in the life of Cole Industries. Except tonight, there was something off, something she couldn't quite name yet, but felt in the pit of her stomach, subtle and sharp. Vanessa Reed leaned into Ethan's side, her hand resting lightly on his arm, her black dress cut perfectly, elegant without trying. The kind of woman who turned heads without asking for attention, and when she laughed, people leaned closer as if drawn by gravity itself. But Lily didn't look at the dress or the smile or the way the room seemed to orbit her. She watched Vanessa's eyes, the way they flicked, quick and precise, toward the security panel near the north entrance, then back again as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't just measured distance, timing, access. Lily blinked once, slow, grounding herself, because maybe she was imagining things, maybe it was just nerves. But then Vanessa did it again, this time glancing toward the cameras mounted near the ceiling, her expression soft, relaxed, yet something underneath it felt calculated, like she was mapping the room instead of enjoying it. "You okay?" Ethan's voice was low, barely above the music, but it cut clean through Lily's thoughts. She straightened instinctively, professional, composed. "Everything's running on schedule," she said, her tone steady, but her eyes drifted back to Vanessa before she could stop herself. Ethan followed the direction of her gaze, just for a second, then looked back at her, something unreadable passing through his expression before it vanished just as quickly. "Good," he said simply, turning back to the crowd as another investor approached, handshake ready, conversation seamless, like nothing in his world ever slipped out of place. But Lily knew better. She had seen things slip. She had lived through what happened when they did. 5 years ago, a data breach had taken everything from her family, a quiet collapse that didn't make headlines but left scars just the same. And ever since then, she had learned to notice the details other people ignored, the hesitation, the pattern, the things that didn't quite belong. And Vanessa Reed didn't belong. Not here. Not like this. A waiter passed by, offering champagne, and Vanessa reached for a glass, her fingers brushing the rim with practiced ease. But Lily caught something else, a faint reflection on the surface of the glass, a distorted glimpse of a badge clipped just beneath Vanessa's clutch, gone before anyone else could notice, but not before Lily's pulse spiked. She shifted her weight, subtle, moving closer to the edge of the room, adjusting her angle, pretending to check her tablet while her eyes tracked Vanessa's movements again, this time more carefully, more deliberately, and there it was, another glance, another calculation, another moment that didn't fit the story everyone else believed. The music swelled slightly, laughter rising with it, the night continuing as if it were perfect, untouchable. But Lily felt the crack forming beneath the surface, thin and invisible, waiting for the right pressure to split everything open. Vanessa leaned in toward Ethan, whispering something that made him smile, a real smile this time. One Lily had seen before only in rare moments when he let his guard down, and for a second, doubt flickered through her mind, sharp and unwelcome. What if she was wrong? What if this was just who Vanessa was? Observant, aware, nothing more. But then Vanessa's eyes lifted again, locking briefly on the security panel, and this time there was no softness in them, no warmth, just a cold, precise focus that sent a chill straight through Lily's chest. Trust is the easiest thing to fake. The thought surfaced in her mind before she even realized it, and she didn't know where it came from yet, didn't know why it felt so certain, but as she watched Vanessa turn back to the crowd, smile perfectly in place, Lily knew one thing with absolute clarity. Something about this woman wasn't real, and whatever the truth was, it was already in motion. Lily did not move right away. Even as the music shifted and the crowd subtly rearranged itself around Ethan and Vanessa, because moving too fast would mean reacting, and reacting without certainty was how people made mistakes that cost them everything. So instead she stood still, letting the noise of the room wash over her while her mind worked quietly beneath it, replaying every detail she had just seen, every glance, every pause, every fraction of a second that did not line up with the version of Vanessa everyone else seemed to accept without question, and the more she replayed it, the clearer it became that this was not instinct or imagination. This was pattern recognition, the same quiet alarm that had once gone ignored until it was too late. She shifted her tablet slightly, pretending to review the evening's timeline, but instead she pulled up the building's internal access logs, a system she knew better than most because Ethan trusted her with things he did not delegate lightly. And trust, she had learned, was not given in words but in access, in quiet permissions that said more than any conversation ever could. And as the screen lit up in her hand, she began scanning entries from the past 48 hours, looking for anything unusual, anything that did not belong, anything that matched the unease now settling deeper into her chest. Across the room, Vanessa laughed again, her voice light, effortless, drawing attention without trying. But Lily noticed how her hand tightened slightly around the glass before she set it down, how her eyes flicked once more toward the same security panel, how she adjusted her position just enough to keep certain angles of the room within her line of sight. And it was subtle, almost invisible, but once you saw it, you could not unsee it. Lily's thumb moved across the screen, filtering entries by restricted zones, and for a moment there was nothing, just the expected flow of authorized personnel, routine checks, normal operations. But then one line caught her attention, a temporary access card issued earlier that afternoon, tagged for a guest, valid for limited areas only. And yet the log showed a brief attempt to access a restricted server corridor on the 12th floor, denied within seconds, but still there, still recorded, still real. Lily's breath slowed as she tapped into the details, the identifier partially masked but not completely, just enough visible for her to recognize the pattern, and her eyes lifted again, drawn back to Vanessa without thinking, because the timing matched too closely, the arrival, the event, the presence, all aligning in a way that felt less like coincidence and more like intention. "Miss Parker," a voice interrupted gently, pulling her back, and she turned to see one of the junior coordinators standing beside her, holding a clipboard, slightly nervous. "The catering team is asking about the dessert schedule." Lily nodded automatically, her professional composure sliding back into place without effort. "Push it back 10 minutes, she said, her tone calm, controlled, as if nothing else occupied her thoughts. "We are running slightly ahead." The coordinator nodded and moved away, and Lily exhaled slowly, grounding herself again, because whatever this was, she needed clarity, not assumptions, and clarity required patience. She took a step toward the side hallway, away from the main floor, where the lighting dimmed slightly and the noise softened into a distant murmur, and as soon as she was out of direct view, she tapped into another system, one not listed on her usual dashboard, a backup security feed that mirrored camera angles in real time, and within seconds, a grid of quiet images filled her screen, each one capturing a different corner of the building, each one telling a silent story if you knew how to read it. She scanned quickly, moving from one feed to the next until she found the north entrance, the same direction Vanessa had glanced at earlier, and there, just at the edge of the frame, she saw it. A reflection more than a direct image, the faint outline of someone adjusting something near their clutch, something small, metallic, not part of any standard accessory, and Lily leaned in slightly, her focus narrowing, her instincts sharpening, because this was no longer a feeling, this was evidence beginning to take shape. A soft chime sounded from her tablet, a calendar alert she had set earlier, reminding her of Ethan's next scheduled interaction, and for a moment she hesitated, caught between her role and what she was starting to uncover, because stepping too far into this meant crossing a line she could not easily step back from. But stepping away meant ignoring something that could put everything at risk, including him. Her grip tightened slightly around the device, and the memory of 5 years ago surfaced again, uninvited but clear, The moment she realized no one had been paying attention until it was too late, the quiet collapse that followed, the way trust had been broken not by force, but by oversight, by someone deciding something felt too small to matter. Lily lifted her head, her decision settling into place with a calm certainty that surprised even her, and she turned back toward the ballroom, her expression composed, her movements measured, because from this moment on, she was no longer just managing schedules and details. She was watching, and more importantly, she was remembering every glance, every shift, every second that did not belong. Because if Vanessa Reed was hiding something, Lily was going to find it, no matter how perfectly it was disguised. The moment Lily stepped back into the ballroom, everything looked exactly the same. The same warm lighting spilling across polished floors, the same low hum of conversation weaving between laughter and music, the same illusion of control that high-level events were built to maintain. But now that she had seen what she had seen, the entire room felt different, like a stage where something unseen was already unfolding beneath the surface, and every movement, every glance carried a weight it had not held just minutes ago. Vanessa stood near the center again, effortlessly blending into conversations, her posture relaxed, her smile precise, her presence magnetic in a way that drew attention while revealing nothing. And yet to Lily, that perfection now felt constructed, like a carefully designed cover that only worked because no one expected to question it. Lily slowed her pace slightly, positioning herself near a mirrored column that gave her a clear reflection of Vanessa without appearing obvious. And she watched, not just casually, but with intention, her focus narrowing to details most people would never notice. The angle of Vanessa's shoulders when someone new approached, the way she subtly adjusted her stance to keep certain exits within her peripheral vision, the near imperceptible pause before she responded to questions, as if calculating not just what to say, but what not to reveal. A soft vibration buzzed in Lily's hand, pulling her attention back to her tablet, and she quickly reopened the access log she had flagged earlier, her eyes scanning the entry again. The attempted access to the 12th floor corridor, the partial identifier, the timestamp aligning too closely with Vanessa's arrival to dismiss as coincidence. And this time she cross-referenced it with guest credentials issued for the evening, narrowing down the list, filtering by temporary access badges assigned. Within the last 6 hours, and as the system processed the request, a small list appeared. Only 3 names, each with limited permissions, each expected to remain within designated areas, and yet one of them had triggered that restricted attempt. Lily's pulse quickened slightly as she tapped into the first profile, then the second, eliminating them one by one based on location tracking data, until only one remained, the name partially obscured for privacy, but the badge number visible enough for her to recognize the sequence pattern, the same pattern she had seen reflected earlier beneath Vanessa's clutch, subtle but unmistakable once you knew where to look. She did not react outwardly, did not let her expression shift, but inside, something settled into place, a quiet confirmation that she was no longer chasing a suspicion, she was following a trail. "You always look like you are solving something," a voice said suddenly beside her, low, familiar, and Lily turned to find Ethan standing just a step away, his presence steady as always, his gaze observant in a way that made it clear he had noticed more than she might have intended. For a brief second, she considered deflecting, offering a routine update, keeping things exactly where they were supposed to be, but the weight of what she had just uncovered pressed against that instinct, and instead she chose her words carefully, balancing caution with truth. "Just making sure everything stays where it should be," she replied, her tone measured, her eyes meeting his for a moment longer than usual. Ethan studied her, not questioning, not dismissing, just watching, as if weighing something unspoken, and then his gaze shifted briefly past her shoulder, landing on Vanessa again before returning. "Does it ever bother you," he said quietly, "how easy it is for things to look perfect?" The question caught her off guard, not because of the words, but because of the timing, and for a moment, she saw something different in his expression, not uncertainty, but awareness, like someone who already knew the answer but wanted to hear it anyway. Lily hesitated, just slightly, then answered honestly. "It bothers me when it looks too perfect," she said. Ethan's lips curved faintly, not quite a smile, but something close to it, and for a second, the noise of the room seemed to fade around them. Good, he said simply, then stepped past her, returning to the flow of the event as if nothing had happened, leaving Lily standing there with a thought she could not ignore anymore, that maybe, just maybe, she was not the only one noticing the cracks. Across the room, Vanessa turned slightly, her eyes sweeping the space once more, and for the briefest moment, her gaze aligned with Lily's reflection in the mirrored column, holding there just long enough to feel intentional, just long enough to send a quiet, unsettling message that cut deeper than any obvious confrontation ever could, and then it was gone, replaced instantly by that same effortless smile as she rejoined the conversation in front of her. Lily exhaled slowly, steadying herself, because whatever game Vanessa was playing, it was no longer hidden, not completely, and whatever role Ethan had in this, whether he was aware or not, was something she would have to figure out quickly, because the next move, she realized, was not just about watching anymore. It was about acting before whatever Vanessa had set in motion reached the point where no one could stop it. The elevator doors slid shut with a soft chime, sealing Lily and Vanessa inside a space suddenly too quiet compared to the controlled chaos of the ballroom. And for a moment, neither of them spoke, the hum of the elevator filling the silence as it began its smooth ascent, numbers lighting up one by one above the door, each passing floor tightening the invisible tension between them. Lily stood near the panel, her posture straight, her tablet held casually at her side, but her awareness sharpened to every detail. The faint scent of Vanessa's perfume, the subtle shift of her weight, the way she did not immediately reach for her phone like most people would in a moment of stillness, and instead simply stood there, composed, as if she had been expecting this exact moment. "You are very observant," Vanessa said suddenly, her voice calm, almost conversational, but there was something beneath it, something measured and deliberate that made the words feel less like a compliment and more like a test. Lily did not turn right away, letting a brief pause settle before she responded, because timing mattered, even in something as simple as a reply. "It is part of the job," she said evenly, her tone neutral, controlled, as if the statement carried no deeper meaning. Vanessa's reflection shifted slightly in the polished metal wall, her gaze resting on Lily now, direct but not aggressive, just enough to make it clear that she was paying attention in a way most people did not. "Most people in your position focus on schedules," Vanessa continued, tilting her head just slightly, her expression thoughtful, almost curious. "You seem to focus on people." Lily allowed herself a small, polite smile, the kind that revealed nothing. "Schedules are predictable," she said. "People are not." The elevator continued upward, the soft mechanical hum steady, unchanging, but the air between them felt anything but stable now, like a conversation that had shifted into something deeper without either of them acknowledging it directly. Vanessa let out a quiet breath that almost sounded like a soft laugh, though there was no amusement in her eyes. "That is what makes people useful," she said, her words smooth, almost effortless. "They are unpredictable until you understand what they want." Lily turned her head slightly then, just enough to meet Vanessa's gaze fully for the first time in that confined space. And what she saw there confirmed everything she had been sensing all night. Not warmth, not connection, but calculation, precise and controlled, like someone who viewed every interaction as a variable to be measured. "And once you understand that," Lily asked, her voice steady, though her pulse had begun to pick up just slightly beneath the surface. Vanessa's lips curved into a faint smile, one that did not quite reach her eyes. "Then it becomes easy," she said quietly. "Trust is the easiest thing to fake." The words landed with a weight that lingered in the small space, echoing slightly in Lily's mind as if they had been waiting to be spoken long before this moment. And for a brief second, the memory of her father surfaced again, the quiet confidence he had once placed in the wrong people, the way everything had unraveled not because of force, but because of belief, and Lily felt that same quiet warning rise inside her now, stronger, clearer, impossible to ignore. The elevator slowed slightly as it approached the next floor, the soft ding signaling its arrival, and Vanessa stepped forward just enough to press the button to hold the doors closed for a second longer, a small, controlled action that shifted the dynamic of the moment even further. "You are loyal," Vanessa said, her voice softer now, almost reflective, as if she were stating a simple fact. "That can be." Admirable, but it can also be limiting. Lily's grip tightened just slightly around her tablet, though her expression remained unchanged. I think loyalty depends on where it is placed, she replied, her tone calm but firm, the words carrying more weight than they appeared to on the surface. Vanessa studied her for a moment longer, her gaze sharp, assessing, as if measuring the response, the reaction, the intent behind it. And then, just as quickly, the intensity faded, replaced once again by that same effortless composure she wore so well in public. Maybe, she said lightly, releasing the hold on the doors as they slid open with a soft glide, the hallway beyond quiet, dimly lit, a stark contrast to the brightness of the ballroom below. Vanessa stepped out first, her heels clicking softly against the polished floor as she moved forward without hesitation, as if she already knew exactly where she was going. And for a brief second, Lily remained inside the elevator, watching her, her mind racing through everything that had just been said, every implication, every subtle shift in tone and meaning, because this was no longer just observation, this was confirmation, spoken plainly but wrapped in layers of intention. The doors began to close again, and Lily stepped out quickly, her decision already made, because whatever Vanessa was planning, whatever she was positioning herself for, it was happening soon, and if Lily waited any longer, she might lose the chance to stop it before it reached the point where no one could undo the damage. Down the hallway, Vanessa turned a corner without looking back, her pace steady, confident, and Lily followed at a distance, her movements quiet, controlled, her focus locked in, because the game had shifted now, from watching to pursuing, from questioning to proving, and somewhere ahead of her, hidden behind perfect smiles and careful timing, was the truth she had been chasing since the moment she noticed that first half-second delay, the crack in something that was never meant to be. Questioned. Vanessa did not slow down as she moved through the quiet corridor, her heels striking the floor in a steady rhythm that echoed softly against the walls, confident, unhurried, like someone who knew exactly where she was going and had nothing to fear from being followed. And that alone made Lily more cautious, because people who had something to hide usually checked behind them, hesitated, adjusted their pace. But Vanessa did none of that. She simply walked forward as if the building itself belonged to her. Lily kept her distance, far enough to avoid detection but close enough not to lose sight. Her steps light, controlled, her breathing even as she rounded the same corner Vanessa had just disappeared behind. And when she reached it, she paused for a fraction of a second before leaning just enough to see ahead, her eyes scanning quickly, precisely. And there Vanessa was, standing in front of a secured door marked for internal systems access, her back partially turned, one hand resting near her clutch, the other lifting slightly as if preparing to do something that required timing. Lily's pulse tightened, not from fear, but from confirmation, because this was no longer subtle observation or quiet suspicion. This was action, direct and intentional, unfolding in a place where Vanessa had no reason to be. She shifted her weight silently and stepped back just out of sight, her mind already moving ahead, calculating what she needed to do next, because walking in without proof would be reckless, but waiting too long could mean losing whatever Vanessa was about to attempt. Her fingers moved quickly across her tablet, reopening the access logs and cross-referencing the live system status, her eyes flicking between data and instinct, until she found it, a pending authentication attempt, not yet completed, hovering in the system like a door waiting to be pushed open, and the badge identifier matched again, the same sequence, the same pattern, aligning perfectly with everything she had seen. Lily inhaled slowly, steadying herself, then tapped into the internal messaging system, her thumb hovering for a second over Ethan's contact before she made a decision that surprised even her. She did not send a full explanation, not yet, just a single line, clear and direct, restricted access attempt in progress. 12th floor corridor. And then she locked the screen, slipping the tablet back to her side as she stepped forward, closing the distance between herself and the door. Vanessa did not turn immediately, but Lily saw the slight shift in her posture, the awareness settling in just before acknowledgement, and then she turned, slowly, her expression composed, almost calm, as if she had expected this moment to come. "You are persistent," Vanessa said, her voice even, no hint of surprise, only quiet recognition, and Lily met her gaze without hesitation, the tension between them no longer hidden beneath polite conversation or layered implication, but present, direct, undeniable. "You are somewhere you are not supposed to be," Lily replied, her tone firm but controlled, each word measured, because this was not about confrontation for the sake of it. This was about stopping something before it went further. Vanessa's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, more like an acknowledgement of the statement itself. "That depends on who decides where I am supposed to be," she said, her eyes holding Lily's, steady, unwavering, as if testing how far she would push. Behind her, the panel beside the door flickered faintly, waiting, the system still processing the incomplete authentication, and Lily's attention flicked to it for just a second before returning to Vanessa, because time was narrowing now, each second bringing whatever this was closer to completion. "Whatever you are trying to access," Lily said, taking a small step forward, closing the space just enough to make her presence unavoidable. "It ends here." For a brief moment, something changed in Vanessa's expression, not fear, not panic, but calculation shifting, adjusting, as if recalibrating a plan that had just encountered unexpected resistance. And then just as quickly, it smoothed out again, replaced by that same controlled calm she had maintained all night. "You believe that," Vanessa said softly, almost thoughtfully, as if considering the idea rather than challenging it outright. And then her gaze shifted slightly, just past Lily's shoulder, for the briefest fraction of a second, before returning. Lily felt it. Immediately, that instinctive awareness that something had just changed, something beyond what she could see directly, and before she could turn, her tablet vibrated sharply against her side, a new alert flashing across the screen as she pulled it back into view, her eyes scanning the message quickly, and her breath caught just slightly as she read it, because the system log had updated. Not here, not this door, but another location entirely, a second access attempt, already in progress, deeper, within the building, in a sector that required higher clearance, one that Vanessa could not have reached physically in this moment. Lily looked up, her focus snapping back to Vanessa, the realization settling in with a quiet, undeniable clarity. This was never about a single point of entry. This was a distraction, a misdirection designed to pull attention away from something else already unfolding. And for the first time since this began, the situation shifted from controlled observation to urgent response. Because whatever Vanessa had set in motion was bigger than this hallway, bigger than this single door, and it was already happening. Vanessa watched the realization cross Lily's face, subtle but visible if you knew what to look for. And this time, her smile came a fraction faster, perfectly timed, perfectly placed, as if she had just confirmed exactly what she needed to know. And as Lily stood there, the weight of that second alert pressing against her thoughts, one truth became impossible to ignore. She was no longer just following Vanessa's moves. She was already one step behind them. For a fraction of a second, Lily did not move, because the realization hit in layers, not all at once. First the alert, then the location, then the understanding that whatever Vanessa was doing here was never meant to succeed. It was meant to delay, to occupy, to make someone like Lily focus on the wrong door while the real one opened somewhere else. And that meant two things at the same time. Vanessa was not just a participant in this plan. She was a key part of it, and more importantly, the actual breach was already happening. Lily's grip tightened slightly around her tablet as she turned, her mind shifting instantly from confrontation to response, because staying here would accomplish nothing now, and every second lost meant the gap between them and whoever was executing the real access would widen. "You set this up," Lily said, her voice lower now, not accusatory, but certain, and Vanessa tilted her head just slightly, her expression almost appreciative, as if acknowledging a correct answer on a test. "You give yourself too much credit," Vanessa replied calmly, though her eyes held a quiet sharpness that did not match the softness of her tone. And for a brief second, Lily considered pushing further, demanding answers, forcing a reaction, but she knew better. This was not the moment for that. This was the moment to move. Without another word, Lily stepped back, already turning toward the direction of the secondary alert, her pace quickening as she moved down the hallway, her focus narrowing to the path ahead, the layout of the building mapping itself in her mind. The quickest route to the sector flagged in the system, 3 corridors down, 1 security junction, then a restricted wing that required executive clearance. Behind her, she could hear Vanessa's footsteps resume, unhurried, controlled, not following in pursuit, but not retreating either. And that in itself was another piece of the puzzle, because someone who had just been exposed would either run or react. But Vanessa did neither. She simply let Lily go, as if the outcome no longer depended on stopping her. Lily reached the junction and turned sharply, her tablet lighting up again as she pulled it into view. Accessing the live feed for the restricted sector, her eyes scanning quickly, searching for any sign of movement, any anomaly that would reveal who or what was executing the second phase, and then she saw it. A brief flicker on one of the cameras, not a person, but a panel, the system interface itself being accessed remotely. Lines of code scrolling across a secured terminal, faster than standard operations, precise, intentional, controlled. No, she murmured under her breath, the word barely audible, because this was not a physical breach at all, not in the way she had expected. This was internal, digital, someone already inside the system, using access credentials that should not have been active. Her mind raced, connecting the pieces, the clone badge, the attempted entry, the distraction in the hallway, all of it designed to create just enough noise to hide the real operation. And now the question shifted from where to who, because whoever was running that terminal had the clearance to bypass multiple layers of security, something that should have been impossible without high-level authorization. Lily stopped just short of the restricted wing entrance, her breath steadying as she brought up the access hierarchy on her tablet, filtering active sessions, cross-referencing them with known personnel, and there it was, a single session flagged as executive level, active within the system, authorized, verified, and tied to a name that made her chest tighten in a way she had not expected. Ethan Cole. For a moment, everything else fell away. The hallway, the alerts, the urgency, replaced by a single, sharp question that cut through her thoughts with unsettling clarity. Had she misunderstood everything? Had the person she was trying to protect been the one orchestrating this all along? The idea did not sit right. It did not align with what she knew, what she had seen. But the system did not lie. Not like this. Not with this level of clearance. And yet something inside her resisted the conclusion. The same instinct that had led her here in the first place, telling her that what looked obvious was not always what was true. Her tablet vibrated again. Another update. The system process accelerating. Whatever was being accessed now moving deeper, closer to core data structures that should have been untouchable, and Lily knew she could not stand their questioning anymore, not when time was slipping away. She stepped forward and pressed her credentials against the scanner, the panel lighting up as it processed her access, granting her entry with a soft click. And as the door slid open, she crossed the threshold into the restricted wing, her focus sharp, her decision made, because whether Ethan was involved or not, whether this was betrayal or something else entirely, she was going to find the truth herself, not through assumptions, not through logs, but by seeing it with her own eyes. Behind her, somewhere back in the corridor, Vanessa remained unseen but not absent, her presence lingering in Lily's thoughts like an unfinished sentence, a reminder that whatever game was being played here was far from over. And as Lily moved deeper into the secured area, one thing became painfully clear. The closer she got to the center of it, the less certain everything seemed, and the more dangerous every assumption became. The restricted wing felt colder, not in temperature but in atmosphere, the kind of silence that did not belong to empty space, but to something actively being protected, monitored, controlled. And as Lily stepped further inside, the soft hum of servers replaced the distant music from the ballroom, grounding her in a reality that was far less polished and far more dangerous. Her footsteps slowed instinctively, not out of hesitation, but precision, because every movement here mattered, every second counted, and the deeper she went, the clearer it became that this was not a place meant for improvisation. Rows of secured terminals lined the walls, each one dim except for a single station at the far end, its screen alive with motion, lines of data streaming faster than standard system processes, commands executing in rapid succession, controlled but aggressive, like someone pushing the system to its limits without triggering immediate alarms. Lily's breath tightened slightly as she approached, her eyes scanning the room, searching for the person behind the access. But there was no one physically present, no figure at the terminal, no shadow moving between the machines, only the quiet evidence of something already in progress, something being controlled remotely. She stepped closer, her tablet lighting up as it synced with the terminal's activity, pulling data in real time, and the name tied to the session remained unchanged. Ethan Cole, the highest level clearance in the system, the one identity that could override nearly every restriction without raising suspicion, and yet the commands being executed did not match his usual patterns, not even close. Lily had spent years managing his schedule, observing his habits, understanding how he operated under pressure, and this was not it. This was too precise, too detached, lacking the human unpredictability she knew so well. And that difference, subtle but undeniable, cut through the doubt that had begun to form in her mind. "This is not you," she said quietly, though no one was there to hear it, her voice grounding her own thoughts as she reached the terminal, her fingers hovering just above the interface before she began to move, accessing the command history, tracing the origin of the remote session, digging beneath the surface where most people would stop. The system resisted at first, layers of encryption folding over each other like locked doors. But Lily did not push recklessly. She moved carefully, deliberately, following the patterns instead of forcing them. And slowly, piece by piece, the structure revealed itself, not a direct breach, but a mirrored access, a shadow session running parallel to Ethan's credentials, using his identity as a cover while operating independently. And suddenly, the entire situation shifted again, not betrayal, but manipulation, not Ethan initiating the breach, but someone using him as the perfect disguise. A sharp realization settled in her chest, clear and immediate. Vanessa was never the end point. She was the key, the one who planted the access, who created the opening, who ensured that when the system looked for a threat, it would see nothing but its own highest authority. Lily's fingers moved faster now, pulling up the file paths being accessed, and one name stood out among the rest, Project Blackline, buried deep within the system, restricted even among executive levels, a file that was not meant to be touched, let alone extracted. And yet the progress bar on the screen told a different story, already halfway complete, moving steadily toward full transfer. "No," Lily whispered again, more firmly this time, because whatever Blackline was, it mattered enough to be protected at this level, and letting it leave the system was not an option. She scanned the interface quickly, searching for a way to interrupt the process, but every direct command required higher authentication, something the mirrored session had already locked down, and brute force would trigger a full system shutdown, something that could cause more damage than the breach itself. Her mind raced, shifting strategies, because stopping this required precision, not force, and then she saw it. A small inconsistency buried in the command chain, a delay in response time between mirrored inputs, barely noticeable, but enough to exploit if timed correctly. Lily inhaled slowly, steadying her hands as she prepared to act, because this was a narrow window, one chance to disrupt the session without collapsing the system entirely, and failure would not just mean losing the file. It would mean confirming that whoever was behind this was already ahead of them in every way that mattered. She placed her fingers on the interface and began to input a counter sequence, subtle, indirect, designed not to block the process outright, but to redirect it, to create a loop that would stall the transfer long enough to expose the true source of the session. And as the system responded, the flow of data flickered, just for a second, just enough to indicate that something had shifted. Behind her, the door to the restricted wing opened with a soft sound, barely audible over the hum of the servers, but Lily heard it, felt it, and without turning, she knew she was no longer alone, because whatever she had just done had changed the balance of the situation, and whoever had been watching from the shadows was now stepping into the light. Lily did not turn immediately, not because she was unaware, but because she needed the system to hold just a few seconds longer, her fingers still moving across the interface with controlled precision, maintaining the loop she had injected into the transfer process, because if she lost that now, everything else would collapse with it. The data stream flickered again, the progress bar stalling just enough to create tension in the system, not failure, but resistance, And that resistance was exactly what she needed. You should not have come this far, Ethan's voice said behind her, calm, steady, unmistakable, and for a split second, the sound of it grounded everything, because it was real, not a log entry, not a system trace, but him, present, watching. Lily exhaled slowly before she turned, her eyes meeting his, searching, not for confirmation of guilt, but for truth, something deeper than what the system had shown her. Ethan stood a few feet away, his posture composed as always, but there was something different now, something sharper beneath the surface, like a layer of restraint barely holding back something more deliberate. You knew, Lily said quietly, not a question, but a realization forming as the pieces aligned, because the timing, the conversation earlier, the way he had asked about things being too perfect, it all pointed to something she had not fully understood until now. Ethan's gaze held hers for a moment longer, then shifted briefly to the terminal, taking in the stalled transfer, the altered command flow, and when he looked back at her, there was a faint, almost imperceptible shift in his expression, not surprise, but recognition. I suspected, he said, his voice low, controlled. But suspicion is not proof. Lily's grip tightened slightly at her side, her mind catching up to the implication. So you let it happen, she said, the words sharper now, edged with something she had not intended to show. Ethan did not flinch at the accusation, did not defend himself immediately. Instead, he stepped closer to the terminal, his eyes scanning the data, the altered sequence she had created, and for the first time since she had known him, she saw something like approval flicker across his expression. I created a scenario where it could reveal itself, he said finally, his tone measured, deliberate. And you just accelerated that process. Lily's breath caught slightly, the weight of his words settling in, because this was not passive observation. This was strategy, layered and controlled, using himself as bait, using the system as a trap, and suddenly, Vanessa's role shifted again in her mind, not just an infiltrator, but part of a larger operation designed to test the system's vulnerabilities. Vanessa, Lily said, her voice lower now, more focused, she is part of it. Ethan nodded once, his gaze returning to the screen. She is the entry point, he said, but not the operator. As if on cue, the system flickered again, the loop Lily had created holding but straining, the mirrored session pushing back, adapting, trying to break through the delay she had introduced, and for a moment, the room felt smaller, tighter, the hum of the servers louder, more urgent. You are running out of time, a voice said from the doorway, smooth, composed, unmistakable, and Lily turned sharply this time, her focus snapping to Vanessa as she stepped into the room, her presence as controlled as ever, but now stripped of the public illusion, no crowd, no performance, just intent. I was wondering how long it would take you to connect the dots, Vanessa continued, her eyes moving between Lily and Ethan, measuring, calculating, and for the first time, there was no pretense in her expression, only clarity. Lily stepped slightly to the side, positioning herself between Vanessa and the terminal without fully realizing it, her instincts taking over, protective, deliberate. It is over, Lily said, her voice steady, though the tension in the room had shifted again, sharper now, more immediate. Vanessa's lips curved faintly, not in amusement, but acknowledgement. It is never over, she replied softly, her gaze flicking to the terminal where the data stream struggled against the loop. It just depends on who finishes first. Ethan did not look at Vanessa, his focus locked on the system, his mind clearly working through the next move, the next step, and Lily realized then that whatever plan he had set in motion had reached its critical point, the moment where control could shift completely in either direction. Black line, Lily said, her voice cutting through the tension. What is it? For a brief second, Ethan hesitated, not out of uncertainty, but choice, deciding whether to answer, and then he spoke, his tone quieter now, more deliberate. It is not just a file, he said. It is a safeguard, a map of every vulnerability this company has, internal and external, designed to protect us by exposing what could destroy us. Lily's eyes widened slightly as the meaning settled in, because in the wrong hands, that was not protection, it was access, complete and total. Vanessa took a small step forward, her gaze steady. And now it belongs to someone who understands its value. she said, her voice calm, confident, as if the outcome was already decided. But Lily's eyes flicked back to the terminal, to the subtle shift in the data stream. The loop still holding, still resisting, and she realized something that neither of them had said out loud yet. The process was not complete, not yet, and that meant there was still a chance to turn this. No, Lily said quietly, more to herself than to them, her fingers already moving back toward the interface, her focus narrowing again, because whatever this was, whatever game had been set in motion, it had not ended, and she was no longer just reacting. She was part of the outcome now. Lily's fingers moved with a precision that no longer came from training alone, but from instinct sharpened under pressure. Her eyes locked on the terminal as the looping sequence she had created began to evolve, not just holding the transfer back now, but forcing the mirrored session to reveal its origin more clearly. And for the first time since this began, the balance in the room shifted, subtle but undeniable. The data stream flickered again, then slowed, not stopping completely but hesitating, like a system being forced to question its own commands. And in that hesitation, Lily saw what she had been searching for, a secondary routing path buried beneath the mirrored access, hidden behind layers of authorization, but now exposed just enough to trace. There, she said under her breath, her voice steady as she isolated the signal, her fingers moving faster, redirecting the loop into the newly revealed pathway, not to block it, but to reverse it, to turn the extraction into a containment process instead. Ethan stepped closer, his presence calm but focused, watching the sequence unfold with a level of attention that matched her own, and for a brief moment, their movements aligned without words, her hands guiding the system, his mind anticipating the next shift, the next reaction, like two parts of the same solution finally connecting. "You are not stopping it," Vanessa said from behind them, her tone still composed, but this time there was a slight edge beneath it, a recognition that something had changed, something she had not accounted for. Lily did not look back, her focus fixed on the screen as the redirected commands began to take effect, the progress bar halting its forward motion and slowly beginning to retract, data no longer leaving the system, but being pulled back into it, secured, locked, sealed behind layers that were rebuilding in real time. "No," Lily said quietly, her voice calm, certain, "I am closing it." The system responded with a sharp flicker, then stabilized, the mirrored session struggling to maintain control as its access points were cut off one by one, each pathway collapsing under the redirected sequence. And then, finally, the terminal paused, the data stream stopping completely, the progress bar freezing at a number that would never reach completion. Silence settled into the room, heavy but controlled, the hum of the servers returning to its steady rhythm as if nothing had happened, as if the system had always been this secure, this untouchable. Lily exhaled slowly, her hands lowering from the interface, the tension in her chest easing just enough to let her think clearly again, and when she turned this time, she did not hesitate, her gaze meeting Vanessa's directly. No uncertainty left, only clarity. Vanessa stood still for a moment, her expression unreadable, the confidence she had carried so effortlessly now tempered by something quieter, not defeat, but acknowledgement, and then she gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, as if confirming a conclusion she had already reached. "Interesting," she said softly, her voice no longer carrying the same certainty as before. "You were not supposed to be part of this equation." Lily held her gaze, steady, unshaken. "Maybe that is the point," she replied. For a brief second, the tension between them lingered, unspoken but complete, and then Vanessa turned slightly, her attention shifting to Ethan, her expression composed. Once more, though the edge of control had changed. "You set a clever trap," she said, her tone measured, almost respectful. "But you underestimated one variable." Ethan's gaze remained calm, unwavering. "On the contrary," he said quietly, "she was the only variable I trusted." The words landed with a weight that caught Lily off guard, not because of their meaning, but because of the certainty behind them, the absence of hesitation, and for a moment, the room felt smaller again, not from tension, but from the shift in something deeper, something that had been building quietly beneath everything else. Vanessa studied him for a second longer, then let out a soft breath that almost resembled a quiet laugh. "Then you got what you wanted," she said, turning toward the exit, her movement smooth, controlled, as if the outcome, while not in her favor, had not been entirely unexpected. She paused at the doorway, glancing back once, her eyes meeting Lily's again. But this time there was no calculation in them, only a brief, fleeting recognition, before she stepped out and disappeared down the corridor, leaving the room quieter than before. Lily stood there for a moment, the aftermath settling around her, the system stable, the threat contained, but her thoughts still catching up to everything that had just unfolded, and slowly, she turned back toward Ethan, her expression shifting, not questioning, not accusing, but searching for something she had not yet put into words. "You knew it could go this far," she said, her voice softer now, more measured, because this was no longer about the breach, but about the choice behind it. Ethan met her gaze, his expression steady, but there was something different there now, something more open than before. "I knew it would reveal the truth," he said, "but I did not know who would be the one to see it." Lily held his gaze for a moment longer, the weight of his words settling in, and for the first time since the night began, the tension that had driven every decision, every movement, eased into something quieter, something more certain. "Next time," she said gently, a faint edge of resolve in her voice, "you tell me before you use yourself as bait." Ethan's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but close enough to feel real. "Next time," he replied, "I will not need to." And as the system lights steadied around them, the last trace of the breach disappearing into silence, one truth remained clear in the stillness that followed. Trust had not been broken tonight. It had been tested, and against everything designed to manipulate it, it had held.